What I have to share exists in conflict with many popularly held beliefs of faith and justice. My heart beats for justice and equality, for the value and dignity of all people, regardless of nationality, age, gender, sexual orientation, or religious belief. And it is because of this conviction that I choose to identify myself as a feminist, unapologetically. I didn't always associate myself with feminism, and a lot of people ask me, why don't I just call myself a humanist? And although I will always stand for all people, I choose to say feminist in the same way that we choose to say Black Lives Matter. Because there are some people within our society that face disproportionate rates of oppression. And so we choose to use our influence to stand with them, to make things better. Now, for me, this isn't a political statement. Although sometimes it pushes me into the realm of politics, or it directs the lifestyle choices that I make on a daily basis. And just to be clear, being a feminist does not mean that I wish to push down or talk poorly of men. In fact, it is just the opposite. I work for the equality and the unity of all people on the very basis of their human dignity. Nothing more, nothing less. Now, people come to an understanding and a self-identification of feminism through many different journeys and all different belief systems. For me, it was Jesus that made me a feminist. And I understand that this might be surprising to some, so please let me explain. From a very young age, I was raised in a home that seeks to follow Jesus. But in my adolescence, I was very deeply hurt by local leaders within our local church. And this experience, which hit very close to home, set me on a course of evaluating what I truly believed and why. I researched many different religions and many different philosophies, but in the end, I found myself right back where I began, with Jesus. But this time, I was encountering a side of Jesus that I had never seen before, and I was absolutely fascinated with what I found. I found that there were many things within his life that were extremely culturally relevant today. Being born to an uneducated adolescent mother of a racially oppressed people group. Throughout his life, he consistently empowered and uplifted the voices of women, at times even taking personal direction under the leadership of women, which was completely countercultural for a man to do at the time. He educated women alongside and as equals to men, placing them in positions of leadership within his work. Interestingly, in one historical document, it is actually a woman who first identifies Jesus as Messiah. And after Jesus is crucified, it is to women whom he reveals himself first and asks them to spread the good news of his resurrection. But his radical nature didn't end then. It wasn't directed solely towards the liberation of women, but for all people. He fed the hungry, healed the sick, valued those with disabilities, and he condemned a materialistic nature that worships money and wealth in our societies. I often wonder, in light of the current refugee crisis, what would Jesus say? Or would he side with a specific political party? Questions that I ask myself. What I do know is that he consistently defended the value of those who are most vulnerable in our societies, the widow, the orphan, the immigrant, the refugee among us. making clear that justice and right living was at the core of his message. And he had no problem calling out the religious hypocrisy of the day, this hierarchy that would pick and choose who was worthy and who was not. Instead, everyone was given a seat at the table. Everyone had value. Everyone had a place to belong. I came to the conclusion that Jesus is for justice of all people and was actually one of the originators of the women's liberation movement. And while the early church lived this out so beautifully, the next 2,000 years of church tradition unfortunately did not follow. And I honestly don't know where in history this shift took place. But even today, there are some churches and some individuals that are phenomenal at lifting up women's voices and putting women in positions of leadership. And there are some that are just not there yet. And as a woman with roots in the church, it is this tension that I've personally struggled with for many years. On many occasions, I have been overlooked, disregarded, or completely excluded on the very basis that I am a woman, and according to some, not to be included among the ranks of my male peers. On one occasion, I'll always remember, my dad, who was also a speaker, was asked if he had a problem with me being invited to speak at big arenas as a woman when he was not. And if I'm honest, it breaks my heart a little bit every time I see a woman held back from pursuing the dreams that God has placed on her heart. I can't believe in a faith that treats me as a second-class citizen, placing limitations of stained glass ceilings upon half of humanity, holding us back based on gender. It doesn't make sense with what I know of Jesus. And so again, I took a leap. I dove into the history of the scriptures, hoping that I would find what I believe in my heart to be true, the equality of all people. If we go back to the beginning and we look at the history of the scriptures, we look at Genesis 2:8, right in the very beginning when God creates Eve from Adam, we see that the word used there is ezer kenegdo, meaning helper. Now, interestingly, this word is used twice to describe Eve, 3 times to describe a military ally, and 16 times to describe God specifically. Meaning that according to the Bible, women were not created as secondary to men, not some helpmate, which is traditionally believed, someone who's subordinate to man, but rather a true ally in the full military sense of the word. And after all that I have researched and all that I have read on the subject, I have come to the conclusion that age, gender, race, sexual orientation, none of these things are a factor in who can be used by God or in what capacity. Right? So if our traditions and our treatment of women is anything less than respectful and dignifying, I humbly suggest that we've gotten it wrong. I challenge my fellow believers to seriously consider this and evaluate it in their own lives, because it is very dangerous to use scripture to justify the mistreatment of another person. This thinking has very real and very dangerous repercussions that extend far beyond the walls of the church into literally every level of society. still today, sexism and violence against women is rampant in our culture and our world. Domestic violence claims 1 in 5 lives every day. Rape culture has transformed parking garages, social gathering spaces, and college campuses into war zones, where 1 in 3 women will be sexually assaulted at some point in her lifetime. And when the worst case scenario does happen, we blame the victim. We ask, what was she wearing? What did she drink? Why was she there? And we let off the perpetrator because we're worried about what the consequences of his crime will be on his future. In the workplace, there are very real glass ceilings that turn boardrooms into boys' clubs. And even today, women still earn less pay for equal work, even if they outperform their male peers. And this does not mean that men aren't equally hardworking at their jobs. It's just a fact that we praise boys for their bravery, their strength, and their intelligence, while we applaud girls for their beauty or sex appeal, conditioning very early on what we expect out of women and what we think women are good for. And while we're on the topic, we need to teach our children to own their own body. It belongs to them. We need to teach them to have confidence and to rock what they got, but we also need to teach them about the importance of consent. Because sexual objectification and sexual violence are real and terrifying things. For women of color or transgendered women, the rates are even higher. And for Aboriginal women all across the country, they're going missing and murdered at an alarming rate, both here and in other colonized nations around the world. And we cannot tolerate it. Because every day, I witness the devastation of people, of women being treated as less than human, as commodities that can be bought or sold for profit or pleasure. With human trafficking being the fastest growing crime on the planet, and the average entry age into prostitution being 11 to 13 years old. This is not a choice. This is a crime. Because virginity tests and child marriage are still a thing. Because the 3 deadliest words on the planet are "it's a girl," with many girl babies being denied the right to live simply on the fact that they are born female. Because boys bring value and girls bring burden. In my eyes, this is why we still need feminism. I honestly wish we didn't. I wish we were past that. But we're just not there yet. But the good news is that we all hold within ourselves the power to change the system. We can demand better with what we choose to say and do on a regular basis. Every day, we vote for the kind of world we want through our actions, our words, and our purchases. When I hear humor about a woman's place, or that makes light of the serious issue that is rape, I speak up. And when it comes to entertainment, sexism is widespread. I mean, we are capable of being more than just eye candy, more than just a love interest in a movie or a song. Women carry interesting, inspiring, challenging stories just like men. But the bottom line is that in a just society, we need to hear all voices and all perspectives represented. So let's get some diversity rising up. If you want to make a difference in your world or make your community or country a better place, then don't wait for somebody to give you permission. Get the job done. Run for office. Take up journalism. Defend the oppressed. Create new possibilities and new job markets to break the cycle of poverty for yourself or for others. Personally, I want to see a national action plan to prevent sexual violence on college campuses. I would love to see a media ranking system that highlights gender bias in film. Because what we see represented in mainstream culture affects how we think and act on a regular basis. And we need to change how we think about women so we can change how we treat them. We're getting there, but we're not quite there yet. This is why I stand for justice and equality. This is why Jesus made a feminist out of me. But furthermore, beyond the teachings of faith or feminism, all that aside, this is just good basic human decency. That we treat one another with respect. And we live our lives in a way that proves that women matter equally to men and men matter equally to women. So here's my challenge for us all. Let us shine a light into the sexist, oppressive shadows of our society. Let us confront what's wrong in the world and multiply what is right. When we see something that is degrading or dehumanizing to another person, be brave enough to call it out, whether that be a sexist joke, a sexist action, or a sexually violent behavior. Because every choice we make matters. I ask you to take the leap because we all deserve better.